At 5:23 a.m., under a low gray sky over Belgorod Oblast, the sprawling oil depot and refinery complex sat in a state of tense quiet. This facility represented a critical logistical artery for Ukrainian forces deployed deep in the region. That quiet was shattered without warning. A major North Korean combined arms force launched a multi-pronged assault, its objective clear: to sever these vital fuel lines and crippling Ukraine's operational capacity in the sector. The attack was overwhelming in scale, involving approximately 60 armored vehicles and an estimated 40 surface-to-air missile launchers. This ground force surged forward under the protective umbrella of heavy electronic jamming and a dense swarm of over 120 loitering munitions and reconnaissance drones that saturated the airspace. Ukrainian defenders, however, had anticipated a strike on this high-value asset. Their response was immediate, activating a layered, in-depth defense. The core of their force consisted of 25 T-80 main battle tanks and a dozen HIMARS artillery batteries. Overhead, MiG-29 fighters stood ready to provide air cover, while Bayraktar TB-2 drones offered a persistent eye in the sky and a precision strike capability. Woven into this defense were mobile air defense systems mounted on T-64 tank chassis, specifically tasked with countering the immense aerial threat. From the first moments, it was evident this was no simple raid, but a large-scale, multi-domain offensive intended to test the very limits of Ukraine's integrated defense network. The first 6 minutes of the engagement unfolded as a controlled storm of sensor warfare and calculated exchanges of fire. As Ukrainian ground units moved to their defensive positions, a comprehensive intelligence and reconnaissance network came alive. Bayraktar TB2s and more than a dozen smaller drones climbed into the sky, weaving a real-time digital picture of the entire battle space. This data streamed directly to Ukrainian command vehicles, positioned safely 1.5 miles behind the refinery. On the ground, this network was augmented by unmanned systems. Four-legged robot dogs and UGV scout teams navigated drainage ditches and scrubland, scanning for the thermal signatures of enemy infantry and detecting tripwires. Simultaneously, 3 North Korean armored spearheads methodically probed the refinery's outer defenses from the northeast and southwest. Their advance was cautious and disciplined, moving in 300-foot bounds, pausing to coordinate under the cover of a rolling 152mm artillery barrage. Ukrainian T-80 crews answered with disciplined fire and maneuver tactics, firing short, flanking bursts before using earthen berms for cover. From 11 miles away, HIMARS batteries began launching guided rockets at suspected enemy assembly zones identified by the drones. In the electromagnetic spectrum, electronic warfare units blanketed a 2-mile radius with disruptive signals, fracturing North Korean command and control and forcing them onto less secure backup channels. No decisive ground was taken in these opening moments, but the sophisticated nature of the battle was already apparent. The tempo of the fight changed the moment North Korean armor broke through the tree line and entered the open fields, closing to within 1,200 yards of the refinery's eastern perimeter. At this point, the Ukrainian defense shifted from reaction to a fully coordinated multi-domain counteroffensive. Across a 9-square-mile grid, fire missions were synchronized between air, ground, and artillery assets. HIMARS systems began targeting logistical staging areas near the village of Novaor, their surgical strikes aimed at disrupting the enemy's supply lines. High above, at 24,000 feet, 4 MiG-29s flew protective orbits, deterring larger enemy aircraft and hunting for any active radar systems on the ground. In a remarkable display of ingenuity, land-based Neptune missile batteries, typically used for coastal defense, had been moved inland. From nearly 60 miles away, they acted as long-range snipers, targeting key bridges and choke points deep in the enemy's rear to slow reinforcements. The electronic battle also escalated. Mobile EW teams created pockets of intense electromagnetic distortion, not to black out communications entirely, but to selectively fragment them. This caused enemy targeting systems to flicker, broke missile locks, and forced enemy crews to relay coordinates manually, all while under fire. On the ground, the fight became a tactical chess match. T-80 tanks and T-64 air defense vehicles fought in pairs, using the terrain to lure enemy armor into kill zones. They fought not for territory, but for control of firing angles and key choke points. The battlefield was a chaotic scene of smoke and fractured communications, yet it was all part of a calculated strategy of exhaustion, designed to grind the enemy's advance to a halt. The battle then entered its most violent phase. With just 950 yards separating them from the first row of storage tanks, North Korean forces committed to a full-contact assault on the refinery's eastern tank farm. An armored column surged forward under a saturation attack of at least 80 loitering munitions that dove towards any available target. From fortified trenches and berms, Ukrainian defenders unleashed a wall of layered, interlocking fields of fire. Heavy machine guns and anti-armor rockets tore into the advancing formations, while smoke and chaff launchers clouded the air. Along the inner fencing, robotic dogs zipped along, sniffing out mines ahead of the main push. The sky became a chaotic arena of air-to-air combat as MiG-29s engaged the drone swarms, while ground-based air defenses lit up the sky, downing several drones and forcing an enemy fighter to abort its attack. But this was a race against time. While the frontline defenders blunted the assault, engineering teams in flame-resistant suits worked frantically behind them, sealing exposed pipes and deploying foam barriers to prevent a catastrophic explosion. Firefighting units rushed to extinguish secondary fires, and EW teams focused their jammers on the final approach, hoping to throw off the guidance of incoming munitions at the last second. This phase was a brutal exercise in tempo management under fire, where every second gained increased the refinery's chances of survival. As the main assault stalled 600 yards from the tank farm, the fight devolved into a brutal close-quarters contest for key infrastructure. By the fourth hour, the battle was centered on three vital points: a concrete pump station, a series of manifold junctions, and a narrow access road. The loss of any one of these could trigger a cascading failure. North Korean sappers tried to infiltrate to plant charges, only to be targeted by precision micro-munitions dropped from Ukrainian drones. The strain on the defenders was immense. HIMARS crews were running low on rockets, and tank crews were burning through spare batteries to power their fire control systems. Electronic deception became a critical weapon, as Ukrainian EW teams spoofed enemy targeting systems, causing them to waste munitions on empty lots. Amid this engineered chaos, moments of raw duty stood out. Unarmed engineering crews sprinted across open ground to repair power lines. Medics pulled the wounded to safety behind shattered forklifts. In one extraordinary instance, a Ukrainian fire team dashed through sniper fire to retrieve a wounded enemy tank crewman, handing him over to their own medics. The cost of the defense was climbing, but so was the resolve to protect life in the middle of the destruction. As dusk fell, both sides escalated. North Korea brought in heavy 203mm artillery and short-range ballistic missiles, which began to hammer Ukrainian positions. The salvos were devastating, shattering blast walls and vaporizing a mobile aid station. Yet, the multi-layered defense held. MiG-29s flying low and fast intercepted the drones guiding the missiles, while mobile air defense systems launched their own interceptors. EW Vans blasted the airwaves with interference, trying to break the missiles' terminal guidance locks. Behind this shield, the true battle was one of logistics. Convoys of fuel tankers moved only at night, shrouded by radar-absorbing tarps. Mechanics worked under fire, crawling beneath damaged tanks to weld cooling lines and replace scorched barrels. The air was thick with the smell of diesel and cordite, and victory was measured in minutes gained, and systems kept running. By the 6th hour, both sides were nearing exhaustion, with ammunition stocks dwindling and casualties mounting. The nature of the fight shifted. Broad assaults were replaced by surgical strikes, targeting specific valves or antennas. The fight became a war of endurance. Around 9:15 p.m., under the faint IR glow of drones, an informal ceasefire took hold. Medics were allowed to evacuate refinery workers and civilians through maintenance tunnels. In a rare gesture, a captured North Korean sapper was exchanged for the coordinates of a collapsed substation where workers were trapped. The refinery still burned, but the horizon had gone still. The quiet was not peace, but the sound of mutual exhaustion. The North Korean objective was partially met. The refinery's output was crippled for weeks, but the Ukrainian defense had prevented a total collapse, proving the resilience of their multi-layered strategy. The battle for the Belgorod Refinery ended not with a decisive victory, but with a haunting image, a column of black smoke rising into the night sky, as rescuers worked in the rubble and two weary armies stared across a shattered landscape, contemplating the next move in a long and brutal war. To know more about the next update, subscribe to our channel.